Okay, in today's episode of The Confidence Show, I'm going to share the 7 mistakes that I've stopped making now that I'm in my 30s. Not because I've got it all figured out, because let's be honest, I have not got it all figured out, but purely because I've stopped pretending that I should have it all figured out, and I wanted to acknowledge how far I've come, whilst also honouring the fact that I still obviously have stuff like work to do, because don't we all? So from chasing red flags to ignoring my own needs to letting other people's opinions drown out my intuition, these are some of the behaviours that I really had to leave behind to finally start living with more confidence in my 30s, more self-respect, and a hell of a lot more inner peace. So if you have been in a season of reflection or quietly wondering, is it just me? Then this episode is your reminder that no, it's not just you, and you're not behind. You are just becoming the version of you who knows better and who does better. So when you think about where you were in your 20s and the mistakes that you made then, or the behaviours that you had, the habits that you had, the patterns that played out, think about how far you have actually come from those days. And know that when you fuck up in your 30s, it's okay, because in 10 years' time, you're going to look back and be like, look at how far I've come because of those mistakes. So the first one is, honestly, I don't regret a lot in life, but this is probably one of my biggest regrets ever. And that is not wearing SPF when I was in, especially my early 20s, when I lived abroad. I didn't wear sun cream every day. I didn't wear sun cream on my face. I lived in Thailand, Australia, Honduras, all places where it's very hot, very sunny, and where my skin needed protection, and that didn't happen. I think I started off when I went to Thailand wearing sun cream quite a bit, and then because I lived there for so long, I was there for a year, and I was just tanned constantly, I didn't see the need for it, because I was like, oh, I'm getting this amazing tan. Obsessed, love being tanned, really disappointed in myself that I didn't fake tan today, but didn't wear the SPF, and now my skin is paying for it. It goes blotchy in the sun now, like my forehead, you probably can't see it that badly. It's definitely got better, but a couple of years ago I went away to Greece, and the pigmentation in my face is not it. It bothers me so much, but I have been using Caudalie Vino Perfect for probably coming up to 18 months, and before that I was using the Clinique dark spot treatment thing that they have. So for the last 2, maybe 3 years now, I have been using serums to fix the pigmentation, or to at least lessen the pigmentation, and it's great through the winter, but then as soon as the sun comes out now, I'm just like, oh my god, this is so annoying. So SPF 50 every day in the summer, SPF 30 every day in the winter now, and it's just a big mistake that I made when I was younger, and I don't make that anymore because my skin is precious. And I will now also wear a hat in the summer as well, so I make sure I have a hat so that my forehead's covered because of the blotchiness. Don't want to make it worse. So let's get that one out of the way. We all make that mistake, I am sure. I wish that I'd listened to the people in my 20s who were like, you need to wear sun cream, because yeah, it turns out that being tanned is not as important as protecting your skin. Who'd have thought it? The next mistake that I feel like I've really stopped making in my 30s is caring more about what other people think of me than what I think of myself. Now, do I spend every single day not giving a fuck about what anyone else thinks? No, of course not. Especially as a content creator, especially as a coach, as someone who's got their own business. Yes, I care what people think of me to an extent. And there are times where I'm very conscious of people's opinions, or there's a little bit of anxiety around, am I going to say the right thing? But at the same time, I care so much more about what I think about myself than what anyone else thinks about. And I never thought that I would get to this position in my life where my opinion of me is more important than anybody else's opinion of me. If I love myself, if I respect myself, if I appreciate the work that I'm doing, if I can celebrate myself, if I feel proud of myself, and I know that I'm doing a good job as a human being, as a coach, as a sister, as an auntie, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, as a friend, if I know that I'm doing a good job, then that is all that matters to me. And if I know that I'm putting my absolute best into something, that to me is far more important than what other people think I'm doing. If I am having a moment where I don't feel so proud of myself, where I feel disappointed in myself, then obviously that impacts things as well. But my own disappointment in myself is always going to be greater than how anybody else could be disappointed in me, or in anybody else's disappointment in me, because I am my biggest critic. So nobody could ever criticize me as much as I criticize myself. But yeah, I feel like that is something that I'm really proud to have got to. That's a place that I'm really proud to have got to, being able to care what I think about myself more than I care about what others think. And I've got a video about how to stop caring what people think of you specifically that I will link for you, because that's a really helpful resource if you are someone who still struggles with what other people are thinking about you. The third mistake that I have stopped making, and I feel like this is always a work in progress, because obviously we spend our whole lives in certain patterns, in certain behaviours, with certain habits and outlooks on life, or perspectives, or the way that we live our lives. We spend our whole lives in that space. So it's not a case of just working on yourself for a couple of months and solving that and unlearning that pattern and then everything being okay. These are all works in progress, always. So with that being said, the third one is being a good girl, a people pleaser, or saying yes to what everyone else wants, even if it means ignoring my own needs. I practice this daily, I would say. I would say pretty much on a daily basis, I have to practice what is going to be best for me. I have to practice honouring my needs, and it comes so much more naturally now than it used to. But I honour my needs regularly, and now I focus more on what is authentic to me, what feels right to me, what is true to me, versus am I doing something that sacrifices me just to benefit someone else. And I also look at that in a way of, okay, why am I sacrificing? What am I sacrificing? And is this sacrifice important at the moment? So for example, let me put some context behind that. Last year, when my granddad was really ill, that was my priority. Being with granddad, looking after him, going to the hospital daily, visiting daily, doing whatever I could to spend as much time with him as possible before he died was my absolute priority. And that meant sacrificing my work, my business, my social life. Like literally everything. My world revolved around granddad. And I was saying yes to a lot of, like, if support was needed, I'd be like, yes, I would go. I'll go to the hospital. I'll take Nan here. I'll come round. That was my choice. So yes, I was sacrificing, and I don't even know, maybe that was a bad example. Maybe that's not even being in the people pleasing. But I was doing what was necessary and what other people needed of me. And I also ignored a lot of my needs during that time as well. But I think that was also struggling to set boundaries, because I knew that we were at this point in life where it wasn't going to be long before we lost him. So I felt like it was okay for me to ignore my own boundaries and ignore my own needs, because it was only going to be temporary. Whereas in other scenarios, can I think of one off the top of my head? Can I fuck? Where I will say yes to things because I feel obliged to, or because I feel like that's what the other person wants me to, so I'm just going to go along with it, even though actually it's not what I want to do. But it took me a long time, especially in my familial relationships, so relationships with like my mum, for example. There would be many a time where I would say yes, or I would do something she wanted me to do, or go somewhere, when it was ignoring what I needed for myself, because I was stuck in that I want to make her happy, I want to please her, I don't want to get into trouble. You know, you have that mindset when you're a kid. But that's something that I have learned very much to step away from. So I'm a lot more comfortable now saying no, saying I don't want to do that, or actually, yeah, speaking up for what I need, even though it might not be what someone else wants from me. I will say no, and that's fine, because I know that I need to honour my needs. And if I'm not, then it builds this resentment in our relationships, right? So if I fall into the people pleasing, or if I make sure that I'm being a good girl, then the resentment builds up over time, and that damages a relationship. So the way that I look at it now is, if I have a conversation with someone and someone asks me to do something, or asks me to be somewhere, or says that they want something from me, and I am not comfortable with that, or I don't want to do it, if I say no in that moment, it is temporary awkwardness or uncomfortableness, or sometimes that's not even the case now. Like, sometimes it's just all in my head that it was going to be a problem, but that's a very temporary moment where I say no to something, the other person's disappointed, then we carry on with our lives. Whereas when you continually say yes to things and ignore your own needs, that builds this bitterness, this resentment, this harbouring of negative feelings towards them, because you feel like you're, I don't know, being taken for granted, or you're doing too much, or you've not got time for yourself, or whatever it is, however that's making you feel. And I feel like in the long run, that is so much more damaging to a relationship than the short-term discomfort of saying no to someone. So I like to keep that in my mind now as well. This was honestly one of the hardest patterns to unlearn, and as I said, it is still something that I really have to be mindful of. And this is actually one of the key transformations that you'll find inside The Standard Is You, because of the journey that it's taken me on, and how I feel like so much more confident standing up for myself now, and not just living my life to please others, or in a way that would please others. So The Standard Is You is my 12-week group program to stop you feeling behind in your 30s. And it's not just about feeling more confident so that you can break these patterns. It's really about you raising the standard of your life in all your areas, including the way that you let people treat you, refusing to settle for anything, including behaviours that you don't deserve to be on the receiving end of. And it's really about you becoming the love of your life, so that you prioritise your needs without guilt or shame. And I think that's the key thing, is doing it without feeling guilty, standing up for yourself, or saying no to someone without the feeling like you have to apologise, or feeling like you're then a bad person because you haven't done what they want you to do. And you get to set the tone for your life. So you get to set these standards, not your mum, not your friends, not your boss, not your old programming from your entire life. You get to be the standard for your own life. So I will make sure that The Standard Is You is linked if you want some more information around it. But it is really key to get to this stage. I feel like this has had such a dramatic impact on the way that I live my life. So the fourth mistake that I'm actually really proud of this one. This is a good one for me. If you knew my relationship and dating history in my 20s, or my history with men in my 20s, like, this is a good one to feel like I've nailed. And that's running towards the red flags instead of running away from them. Now, I obviously talk about this so much more in the Date with Confidence podcast in various different episodes. If you didn't know, then I have a second podcast called the Date with Confidence podcast. So again, I'll make sure that that's linked for you as well. But really, when I was younger, I focused a lot on men. I loved men. I loved flirting with men. I loved meeting men on nights out. I loved hooking up with men. Men were a big part of my life. And the majority of my friends were guys. I was around a lot of male energy all the time, and I loved it. I really enjoyed that period of my life. I feel like I've lost that a little bit. Maybe not lost it, but I feel like I've stepped out of that so much now that I'm in my 30s, especially being in this position of my life right now, where I'm back at home, where the majority of my friends are women, where there's a lot of experiences I've had with men that I've then had to unpack and work through the healing of from my 20s. So many different experiences. But yeah, when I was younger, I very much saw the red flags and saw it as a bit of a challenge. I used to really like a challenge when I was younger. Maybe this is the problem that I have now I'm dating, because I just find things are a little bit boring now. But I used to feel a real sense of achievement. Oh, I sound like such a twat, don't I? I used to feel a real sense of achievement when I hooked up with various different guys when I was younger. And I loved a challenge. So if it seemed like someone was going to be hard to get, you best believe I was going to make it happen. And I loved the thrill of a chase. I don't know whether this was because I was around so many men, so this was just the energy that I was in, but I enjoyed chasing. I very much was in that masculine energy of, I like to chase. I have fun chasing. And then the chase would end, and then I'd be a bit like, oh, this is kind of boring now. Like, I kind of, it's so bad. Maybe I was the red flag. But yeah, and a lot of the people that I was attracted to were walking red flags. Whereas now, I feel like I can, for the most part, spot a lot of red flags early on, and I make the conscious choice to run away from them. Whereas before, I'd be like, yeah, challenge accepted. I'm just gonna press self-destruct here. Now I'm just like, no, we know better than this now. We are going to learn from our past and we are going to walk away. And that's what we do. I'm proud of that one. So number 5 is not being honest with my friends or myself about how I was feeling. Now this very much comes from an experience I had when I was younger. I was really, really good friends with someone when we lived in Thailand. We were really close. We worked together. We hung out together. I thought we were like best friends. And I had a lot of female friends when I moved to Koh Tao in Thailand. I had lots of female friends and I absolutely loved them. And it was the first time that I'd ever really had so many close female friends. And I loved it. And one of my best friends there, we'd gone on a night out and something had happened with, I think she'd been seeing someone, something had happened with this guy, she was completely blindsided, and because now I know that this is like an ADHD trait, but I'd been through a similar experience, so I was telling her about a time that I'd been through this experience as a way to be like, oh my god, I relate to what you're going through, this is what happened to me, this is how it felt, I so understand you. But she interpreted that as, and she actually said to me, stop making it all about you, it's not all about you. And there was this moment where we had this, I suppose, a bit of an argument, but it kind of felt like a slap in the face because I'd been trying to relate to her so that she knew that she wasn't on her own. And that was just not the way that it was received. And then to be told, you're making everything about yourself, that comment stayed with me for over a decade. It's only really been in the last couple of years that now I feel comfortable opening up to my friends, because anytime I wanted to ask for help or say I was struggling or talk about something that was going on for me, I would stop myself because I'd be like, oh wait, are they going to think that I'm just talking about me? So then I wouldn't talk about myself. I wouldn't be honest about my feelings. If someone asked about work, I'd just be like, oh yeah, it's great, and I'd change the subject quickly. Or if someone asked about literally anything, to be honest, there was a certain couple of people that I would maybe deep dive with and I'd be honest with because we'd had the history and we'd had such long friendships, but especially in newer friendships, I was a bit like, oh, I can't open up and I can't be myself and talk how I want to talk because I'm scared that people will think I'm this selfish person who only talks about themselves. Whereas now, and I've actually had conversations with my friends about this, and I've said this to them about how I find it hard to open up because I am scared that they'll think that I'm just taking over when that's never ever the case. And they've been like, that's, in the nicest way possible, like, that's fucking ridiculous. Like, we want you to talk to us, we're your friends, open up. So now I do have to, whenever I feel like scared to talk about what's going on with me or like scared to open up, I'm just like, no, they're your friends. If it was if the shoe was on the other foot, I would want my friends to be honest with me and open up to me. So this is something that I've really worked on, and I don't make the mistake now where I stay quiet because I think people don't care. And that has helped me form much closer relationships with people. It's helped me form deeper connections, deeper bonds. It's helped me feel better because now if I am struggling with something, I have multiple people that I know that I can drop a message to and be like, oh my God, this has just happened. What the fuck do I do? Or I'm struggling with this. I'm really having a bad time. Like, I can go to people knowing that they are my friends and they want to hear shit, right? And I don't feel guilty now or feel like I am, taking over things. But it's so interesting how that I can remember the conversation so vividly. It was like after a night out. I can remember it so vividly, and that conversation impacted my life and my friendships for well over a decade. I was 22 when we had that conversation, and it's only been in the last couple of years that I realised how much that was impacting me. So that's something that I'm not holding on to anymore, a mistake that I'm not making. Number 6, the penultimate one. The penultimate mistake is running away from my problems instead of allowing myself to process and move on. I loved to run away. I was the girl that ran away in her 20s. And specifically when it came to breakups, so after my first major heartbreak, I couldn't deal with it. I literally couldn't deal with it. My world felt like it had fucking ended, and all I wanted to do was be as far away from the UK as possible. So I ran away to Thailand, which your problems don't end in Thailand, right? Your problems don't end there. They don't just suddenly disappear. You don't suddenly stop thinking about them. But it was nice to be sad on a beach. It was nice to be sad on a beach with a whole new bunch of friends in an environment where it was acceptable to drink all day every day, right? That was what I very much used to do. I would run as far away as possible and not deal with the feelings that I was feeling. And that took me so long. So that breakup specifically, we'd only been together for 3 months, and it was a fucking whirlwind. And he was the first guy that I fell head over heels in love with, thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with him, had never experienced feelings like that at all. And it was like classic, like now I look back, it was like classic love bombing, gaslighting, just so toxic. And it absolutely destroyed me. And it took me, I was still struggling with it in 2015. So when I was in Australia, I remember still struggling with it. And I was with someone new at this point, and we'd been split up for 3 years at this point, 3 years. And I was still struggling to go over it because I'd never actually dealt with the feelings. I just ran away and drank every single day and partied, and that was how I was coping. And that doesn't solve problems. Whereas when I went through my last big breakup with, again, the guy that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, we'd been together for a lot longer. We'd been together for 5 years. We'd been sleeping together for 1.5 years. So we'd kind of been together sort of like 6.5, 7 years, in that weird kind of situationship space, and then official and everything. And yes, I still wanted to run away. Yes, I wanted to escape and get the fuck out of the UK, because I'd come back temporarily so that we could move to Bali together. Yes, I wanted to run away, but then the pandemic happened, and then I didn't really have a choice but to stay here and work through my shit. And that was actually good. It was actually a blessing in disguise, because it allowed me to process what was going on. Not being able to run away meant that I actually had to deal with my feelings, meant that I actually had to look at what was going on and be like, okay, what are we going to do about this? How can we change things? Let's actually work through this so that we can clear everything before we move on again. And I think during that healing process as well, I also worked on some of the stuff from previous breakups. So from all my other relationships previously, I was able to work through those things as well, because I had things from past relationships that I'd never dealt with, because again, running away, queen over here, that's what I was really good at. So I don't run away from my problems now, even though I get the urge to, and even though every now and again I get the desire to push that massive red button that says self-destruct. I don't do it, because I know better, and I know that in the long run, however much processing shit is not fun in any way, shape or form, I know that it's better for me, and that there's lessons to be learned, and it's a good thing in the end. So then the last mistake that I stopped making now that I'm in my 30s is trusting other people's judgments and opinions over what my intuition is saying. And this is something that, again, was really easy for me to do, especially the last couple of weeks. I was dating someone from April, and I talked about this in the last episode of the Date with Confidence podcast, so I'll leave that linked for you. I knew instantly after something they'd done, I checked out. I was out, and I'd asked my friends about it. I'd messaged my friends when I was on the train home from seeing them and just been like, this has just happened. What do you think? Am I being dramatic? Because to a lot of people it would just be a tiny little thing. To me it was a huge thing, and I was bothered by it. And multiple friends were just like, this isn't a reason to break up with someone. I think you should consider things a bit more, kind of give him a chance. Like, there is such a good guy, there are other like, this is just not a reason to be ending things, right? And I knew that they were all wrong. Not that they were wrong, like, their opinions were valid, of course, but I knew that my intuition was like, nah, we're out, we're done, we are done. And now, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, whatever I do in my life, my intuition leads me, and I listen to my gut instinct, and that always serves me well. Even if it doesn't make sense to me at the time. There are multiple times where things haven't made sense to me in the moment, but I've trusted my intuition, and then it's all worked out, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I had to do things this way. So yeah, trusting my opinions over, trusting my intuition over other people's opinions or judgments is a skill that I have learned, and something that I've practiced a lot over the last few years, and now it's so much easier. And that's the thing, when you practice listening to your intuition and responding to those nudges rather than ignoring them, or rather than getting in your head and trying to find logic, it then becomes so much easier for you to continue doing that more naturally. So now it's just easy for me to be like, yep, gut saying that, okay, this is what we're going to go for. So yeah, I think these are all things that we can all work on, and we can all continue to improve as we go through our 30s. I'd love to hear from you if this was helpful, if there are mistakes that you have stopped making, if this list has made you think, oh, okay, these are things that I need to work on. And the truth is, some of these mistakes really do take longer than others to unlearn, but that's okay. The only way that you're going to unlearn them is through practice, repetition, and holding yourself accountable. And that's something that I feel like I've got really good at over the last few years. Your 30s aren't about getting everything right, and I know sometimes we can feel like we have to get everything right because we're older, we're supposed to be wiser, we're supposed to know better, but you're still supposed to fuck up in your 30s. Every chapter of your life is a learning curve. That's how you grow, that's how you evolve. Like, it's okay to still get things wrong. Don't let anyone else tell you any differently. Your 30s are really about being honest with yourself, about uncovering the patterns that have negatively impacted you, and getting clear on the beliefs that have been running the show, which were likely beliefs that were never yours anyway, which is exactly what we talked about on the last episode of The Confidence Show. So go back and give that one a listen. I will make sure that it is linked for you. And if even one of these mistakes has made you pause and say, oh, that is me, then good. That's good, because the first step to change is always going to be awareness. And once you have that awareness, you can then choose to do things differently. You can make that choice to be like, okay, that's made me feel uncomfortable. I know that this is something that I do. Now I'm going to go and change things for myself. You get to make that decision. Stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know, and start celebrating the version of you who is ready to learn, ready to let go, and ready to change their lives for the better. Remember, you're not behind, you are not failing, you've just been making mistakes you weren't even aware of. But now you are aware, so now you have the chance to do things differently. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Confidence Show, please take a sec to leave me a review on iTunes. And if you've got a dilemma that you'd like me to cover, slide into my DMs on Instagram at YourConfident30s, and I will create an episode about your dilemma to help everyone else in their 30s who is going through the same thing, because I guarantee if you are feeling that way, somebody else out there is feeling that way too. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one. If today's episode of The Confidence Show gave you the boost you needed, share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really does mean the world. And if you're ready to stop settling for okay and start living your 30s with more clarity and confidence, check out The Standard Is You. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.